Hello, and welcome back to the Kinzoo Book Club, brought to you by Kinzoo's Together app. Today's story is called The Robot Who Couldn't Cry by Karen Hodgson and Madalina Dina. Let's begin. It was a rainy day, and Rusty was feeling sad. He watched the raindrops drip slowly down the window. They looked like tears. I wish robots could cry, he thought, as one fat raindrop traveled the length of the pane before landing, plop, on the windowsill. All Rusty's friends cried when they were sad. It made them feel better, but Rusty couldn't cry. No matter how much he tried, he couldn't shed a single tear. It was the way he was made. Rusty didn't notice Delilah enter the nursery. "What's wrong?" she asked when she saw Rusty's glum face. "I'm feeling sad," he said. Delilah put an arm around her friend's shoulder. "Why don't you have a good cry? Sometimes crying makes you feel better." "That's just it," said Rusty. "Robots can't cry. No matter how hard we try. It's the way that we're made." Delilah put on her pea-green thinking cap. "I know what we can do," she exclaimed, and without waiting to explain, she disappeared into the gloomy hallway. In a moment, she was back, carrying her violin. "I know a piece of music that's so sad it will bring tears to your eyes," she said. With a flourish, she picked up her bow and stroked it slowly, backwards and forwards, across the strings. A strange, wobbly feeling welled up inside Rusty. His antenna stood up on end, and his bolts began to tingle until he thought that he might burst. "Stop! Stop! Please stop!" begged Rusty. "Oh, dear," said Delilah. "That didn't seem to work." "No, and now I feel truly miserable." "I'm sorry," said Delilah. "Perhaps you should ask Rose to help. Rose is very clever and is sure to think of something." In the library, Rusty found Rose curled up on a green leather armchair. "Good heavens, Rusty," she said. "You look down in the dumps." "I am," he replied. "When I'm feeling sad, I find that a good sob helps," said Rose. "I know," said Rusty. "But robots can't cry, no matter how hard we try. It's the way that we're made." "There's no such word as can't," snapped Rose. Sometimes Rose could be a teensy bit bossy. "What if I told you a sad story?" she suggested. "Sad stories make me cry." Rusty snuggled down next to Rose, and she read him a very sad story indeed. Rusty felt his throat go dry, and a lump grew in both his antennae. He wanted to cry more than ever, but couldn't squeeze out any tears. "Oh dear," said Rose, when she finally looked up at the dry-eyed Rusty. "That's the saddest story I know, and it hasn't helped at all." Rusty shook his head. "I feel sadder than ever," he wailed. "It's just a story," consoled Rose. Then she added, "I think you ought to speak to Claude. He'll know exactly how to make robots cry." Claude was in the kitchen preparing soup. "Why the long face?" he asked when Rusty appeared at the chopping board. "Because I feel sad and I can't cry," answered Rusty. "Why don't you make yourself useful and chop up these onions? Chopping onions makes everyone cry." Rusty picked up the knife and carefully chopped the onions into small pieces. The onions made his eyes sting and his nose tickle, but still, he couldn't cry. "Oh dear," said Claude when the last onion was finished. "That didn't work." "No," said Rusty, "robots can't cry, no matter how hard we try. It's the way that we're—" "Nonsense," said Naughty Ned, who had wandered into the kitchen looking for a bowl of icing to lick clean. "I bet I could make you cry." "How?" asked Rusty. "Like this," said Ned, and he stamped on Rusty's foot. "Hey!" said Rusty. "Yow!" yelled Ned, jumping up and down, rubbing his foot. "That didn't work," he gasped. Rusty threw his arms up in despair. "I give up. I can't cry, no matter how hard I try. It's the way that I'm made." Just then, Jack popped up. "Why do you want to cry?" he asked. "Because I'm sad, and Delilah and Rose think that crying will help," answered Rusty. "Yes," admitted Jack, "but wouldn't laughing be better?" "I suppose it would, but how can I laugh when I feel sad?" Jack thought for a moment. "I could tell you a joke," he said. Rusty brightened. He loved jokes. Jack told Rusty his favorite joke. Rusty began to laugh. Then he laughed some more. He laughed until his cheeks ached. He laughed until his nose snorted. He laughed until his stomach shook. He laughed until his legs gave way and he collapsed on the floor. He laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed until... "Look! Tears!" cried Claude. Rusty put a hand to his wet cheek and through his laughter exclaimed, "Robots can cry! as long as they don't try." Thank you for reading with me today. If you enjoyed today's story, you can find many more just like it on Kinzoo's Together app. See you next time.